Hello, welcome back to Basement Movie Room. As you can see, I'm alone this time. Jared decided to go out of town, so to keep you guys in some content, I decided to go ahead and record a review by myself. And this is actually a theater review. I went to the theater and saw A Quiet Place Part 2, which is not the first time I've been to the theater since the pandemic began. I guess in the 15 months or so since the pandemic began, I've been to the theater about 5 times. I rented a private theater for my birthday to see Goonies. I saw Jurassic Park. I saw Empire Strikes Back. I saw Godzilla vs. Kong. That was recently, obviously. And then I also went to Jared's son's birthday for Crude's New Age, which I actually enjoyed. It's a Nick Cage film. But this time I went back to see A Quiet Place Part 2. I really loved the first film in this series, and I really wanted to see this film as well. So basically, A Quiet Place Part 2 starts out in a weird place, honestly. It starts out before the first movie. It starts out with the invasion of the monsters. So John Krasinski reprises his role as Lee Abbott despite dying in the first film. Spoiler alert, sorry, you shouldn't be watching this review if you haven't seen the first one. And you get kind of how this happened. Essentially, there's like meteorites or something hitting Earth, and these monsters hitched a ride. I mean, it's reminiscent of Starship Troopers, how they put the bugs on planets, I guess. So they're at a baseball game. You meet all the characters again. You meet John Krasinski's Lee Abbott, Reagan Abbott, played by Millicent Simmons. She's the deaf girl. Emily Blunt's character, Evelyn Abbott. Noah Jupe's character, I can't remember his name in the movie. And of course, there's no infant in the opening scene because that was a plot point in the first movie. So you're at the baseball game, and all of a sudden they start seeing something coming from the sky. They all leave the baseball game, and that's when the monsters start invading. You see John Krasinski and Reagan driving, and the monsters start invading. John Krasinski is Lee Abbott's very smart in this movie, figuring out what's going on real quick. That sound is attracting these monsters, these animals, these aliens. So him and Reagan are getting away, and you're back to the first movie. You're back to that paranoia of the first movie. Reagan can't hear; she doesn't know what's around her, and Krasinski's kind of helping her get through this. And they're separated from Emily Blunt and Noah Jupe. So they're separated from them, and they're trying to find their way away from these monsters, basically, to get back to their farm. So that whole flashback sequence is kind of more action-packed than the first movie is completely, even though the first movie has a lot of action towards the end. But there's so many people, so you're seeing a lot of monsters attacking, although it's never gory, particularly gory. I mean, there's some, shots of things. But you see a lot of kills. You see a lot of the monsters killing people in there. And so they get through this, of course, because they're in the first movie and this is a flashback. And it shows how they've developed their ways and how John Krasinski kind of figured out how these monsters work. And so right after the flashback scene, you are shot right back to right after the first movie, essentially, where they had just killed the monsters. Emily Blunt's going back in the farmhouse to get the oxygen tank for the baby. And Reagan is moving around the farm. She goes out on her own, and in the evening she decides to light the signal fire to see if anybody else is left. If you remember, Lee lit the signal fire on top of the silo every night, and other people would. So she lights the signal fire. She gets one response from the signal fire. So these farms or homesteads or whatever they are have all fallen except for one. So the next day, Evelyn, Noah Jupe's character, Reagan, and the baby set off on their sand pass to go find where this signal fire is, to go to this signal fire. And you kind of get a significant scene where they reach the end of the sand path that Lee set up. And that's the farthest they've been in the 15 months since the Quiet Place 1 had, since they set that up. So they venture off the path and they head out, and I'm not going to go into a lot of more detail because it's a newer movie. I don't want to do spoilers. But there's one scene in particular where they get to this place. They make it to this place, and they've been safe the whole time. And there's a trap, and one of the characters gets hit by the trap, and he can't. I gave it away. He can't help but scream, and that brings the monsters down. But that also brings us to the other character that we get in this movie. We saw him in the flashback. He's played by Cillian Murphy. That's not a spoiler because he's in the poster. So Cillian Murphy's going to be in this movie. that gives a chance for this other character to see that they're not a threat to him, because you get the feeling once you meet him that he's encountered a lot of people that have been threats to him, that he's scared of people at this point. He's by himself. So he sees them deal with the monster, because Regan uses a speaker and her hearing aid to do what she did in the first one to make the monster go crazy. Emily Blunt kills it. And then, of course, more monsters are going to come because she uses a shotgun. So he sees that they're not a threat to him, and he goes to help them and get them to safety, which they do. And from there on, the rest of the movie, you kind of get a story going forward to try to figure out where they can go safely or what they can do to help other people and things like that. So yeah, it's a pretty tightly plotted movie overall. I really enjoyed the plot of the movie. I thought it was very good. For a sequel that seemed wholly unnecessary, it worked out very well. I mean, they got John Krasinski to come back to tell this particular story, which was great. And he came back with the writers from the first one as well. They worked together again, as far as I could tell, to tell this particular story to us. And I think it's a good follow-up. I think it's a fantastic follow-up, honestly. There's a lot of action in the movie, probably about the same as the first one. After you open up that flashback scene's a lot more action than the first one, and then you get very similar action going forward. There are some decisions in the movie that I'm not super keen on. Some characters really act like they've never encountered these monsters before, especially Noah Jupe's character. He I guess in the first movie he was kind of like he's shell-shocked somewhat by all this, and he remains to be that character in this movie. He's shell-shocked. He makes some stupid decisions, makes things happen. He does things that aren't very smart. That kind of got to me thinking, like, why would he do that? Doesn't he know better at this point? But maybe, he's a kid still. Millicent Simmons, just remains fantastic in this movie. She's just terrific. Her and Cillian Murphy have a lot of scenes together. They work together, and he's fantastic as usual. Cillian Murphy's just a fantastic actor. If you've never seen Red Eye, that's a great movie with him and Rachel McAdams, where he's like a killer on a plane, and it's so good. So see Red Eye. That's a Wes Craven film, actually. Rest in peace, Wes Craven. But yeah, Cillian Murphy's fantastic. Peaky Blinders, 28 Days Later, 28 Weeks Later, I guess, too. But yeah, Cillian Murphy's fantastic. His relationship with Millicent Simmons in this movie is just ridiculously good. It's like probably the best part of the movie, in my opinion. Emily Blunt's given... We kind of have divergent storylines where Emily Blunt's given something to do, Millicent Simmons and Cillian Murphy are given something to do, and Noah Jupe's given something to do. But that also leads to one of my favorite parts of the movie, and it's not a part of the movie. I'm not going to talk about a part of the movie, but it's the way the movie's put together. It's the editing that's done in this movie. There's a certain section where there's 3 pieces of action going on. Emily Blunt, Noah Jupe, and the baby, and Cillian Murphy and Millicent Simmons are all in different places, and there's 3 different pieces of action, and we're constantly cutting back and forth between these action pieces. And I was just amazed at how good they did. Because you never feel like you're pulling away from that action, that you're going to miss something in that action to go to this action, because each one is kind of just playing off each other. They're almost mirroring each other to an extent, and it's really, really fantastic editing. And of course the sound in this movie is great, or the lack of sound in some instances. When you're dealing with Regan, Millicent Simmons' character, she's deaf, so you get like the dropout of sound sometimes when she can't hear, when there's a monster threat that she doesn't know is there, and it's just fantastic. And then you get a lot of other great sounds. The sound's fantastic. It was in the first one too, so you know what I'm talking about if you've seen the first one. The sound is ridiculously good. But yeah, I mean, overall, fantastic sequel. Maybe not as good as the first one. It's pretty close though. Like I said, it felt like an unnecessary sequel, but I think it lived up to the first one. And not all sequels can do that. Many sequels fail where the first one succeeded, and I think this one certainly did not fail. It did a good job. There's a part near the end, another part that I'm not too keen on, that's kind of like some convenience for plot and action, and you'll see that. You'll understand what I'm talking about. But certainly, fantastic movie. Definitely check it out, especially if you like the first one. And if you haven't seen the first one, watch that and then watch this, because I think you're going to enjoy them both. They're terrific movies. You'll definitely want to check this out. I'd rate this 4 stars out of 5. It's a fantastic film. Definitely check it out. We'll see you next time on Basement Movie Room. Thanks.